lots to discuss, but this is the running show that we do every Friday, and we've got a special guest who's actually coming from Kenya and has had...
your favorite part of the world, eh?
Oh, yeah. I love East Africa. I love East Africa. And I hope, Kudzai, you have some interesting stories to tell us about East Africa. But you've been everywhere. You know, UK, I follow you, you know. I stalk. And you've been, you know, in the UK, in the US, and everywhere around the world. So, you know, doing big things. So we're quite interested in what you're doing. But thank you very much for coming and for bearing gifts.
It's, I think, on the occasion of your birthday, Tinashe.
I feel so special, man.
So happy birthday to you. Wise men always come from the East. I come from the East, both from Kenya and also locally in Zimbabwe. I come from Manicaland. So shout out to my Chakawa people from Chimani.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
And it's Kericho Gold travel bag.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
This is for you to move with when you're on the go.
And you know,
very richly deserved, because the teetotalers don't do well with gifts for the most part.
Yeah, we don't. So, you know, great that you're actually thinking of us. And we are actually traveling at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a 16-hour flight.
Wow.
And this is fantastic because I'm going to actually drink this during the travels. But thank you very much for having us. And we follow you on X. You're quite a character on X. You want to talk about that?
I'm a noise maker. I'm a noise maker. This is why I do not use my real name. I'm kidding. I do use it sometimes. But I was very deliberate in choosing my Twitter name when it was still called Twitter. First, it was Kedu Kudzai, which means our Kudzai, because I used to focus mostly on travel blogging. Then I realized I could talk a little bit more about the more serious stuff that I do around economic development, particularly enterprise development. So I do a lot of work that's interesting with SMEs, not only in Zimbabwe, but across the region. And that explains a lot of my movement. That, but also I spend a lot of time doing financial education, and that's how I selected my tag, @FinLitBay.
Yeah, @FinLitBay.
Yes.
Okay.
Or Cash Queen.
Cash Bay.
No, Cash Queen.
Oh, Cash Queen.
Cash Queen is the
Cash
one
Queen.
that I
That you remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other one is a bit of a, yeah.
And I think the one time you were gashing about, you know, Bitcoin. What happened?
I was hoping we wouldn't start there. So, but since we are here and Bitcoin has, I think it's close to 120,000 now.
Yeah.
Look, cryptocurrency is something that excites Africans, and I think considering the amount of trauma that Zimbabweans have passed through, I think we have a lot of appetite for anything that looks like a currency, anything that seems to gain in terms of investment returns. And I think that time was mostly during COVID, to be honest. Okay. I still don't have an issue with Bitcoin. It is the poster child of all cryptocurrencies. I actually have only one regret, and I don't do many regrets in life, that I did not buy a full coin when I could, because I started to know about it exactly 11 years ago through a guy called Tawanda Kembo, same guy who was to launch Zimbabwe's, I think, then only exchange, yes,
which was
Golex,
banned by RBZ,
which was banned, and so there's a whole story around that. I spent a couple of
but
years.
But isn't that interesting? Because what would have happened? This was what, 2015?
So here's
2014.
The thing.
If that exchange, because it would have been one of the largest exchanges in the world, actually.
I think so.
Because it was really ahead of it.
Exactly.
Ahead of its time.
That guy was early. He was a phenomenon. It was, I think, one of the greatest highlights or delights of my life, to spend about 2 or 3 years working with him. And we were working on something else. We were working together in an innovation hub. We'll talk about that later. But he was then building, Golex. And he's the first guy who told me about cryptocurrency and about Bitcoin, and sent me, I think, the equivalent of then $3, which I recently calculated should be about 300 now. That tells you the phenomenal gains that were possible. But that said, that's just but one asset class in many. It's pretty much an alternative investment. I wouldn't put everything I have in it.
Okay. But you seem to be at the forefront of finance or entrepreneurial ventures, startups, and you were quite involved in the startup ecosystem in Zimbabwe.
I want to believe so. That's something I can definitely say with Chest. Together with Tawanda and a gentleman called Love Monyatsine, we were able together to start up Zimbabwe's at least formally recorded innovation hub. That was Muzinda Hub, sponsored by a particular corporate. I will not say which one.
No, they're a friend of the show.
Oh, are they? All right. I wasn't sure whether I could put out names. So since we're naming names, it was definitely supported in the first instance by High Life Foundation, which was, of course, backed by Econet. And the theory of change was very simple. If we can come together and put in a space where we can bring in some of Zimbabwe's best ideas, and Muzinda, really the name came from bringing like-minded people together. It was to say those people who want to solve what we liked to call difficult and important problems in Zimbabwe. And the intent was to support them. And so I would say that was perhaps one of the earliest versions of building Zimbabwe's innovation ecosystem. And we're really mirroring what things we had seen, interestingly, in Kenya, where I am now. And what we had seen in Kenya was that the iHubs of the world, that was around 2011, had started up physical spaces where people would meet. They would have events like hackathons. They would say we have a particular sector we want to hack. For example, it could be education. What are the problems in education? People get into teams, and over a night, over a period of maybe 2 days, they come up with a solution to a specific problem. But what I like about hackathons, and I know that a lot of people up to now say that, oh, hackathons are a waste of time. It's just people sitting around, pretending to be smart. But people do build things, during hackathons. What I liked about the format of this, and they still remain to me a very valuable way of bringing people together, is that typically when you start, it could be complete strangers walking into a room, because sometimes people have really great ideas, but they can't find a co-founder. Or you're a very technical guy and you're not good at building, you're not good at selling. So typically when a hackathon happens, you want 3 types of people in there, right? You want the hacker, that's the techie guy or the techie girl. You want what we call the hipster, is the person who makes it look pretty, so someone who can design. And then you want the hustler, the person who can sell. Many times you don't find all 3 skills in one person. And
so I'm trying to think who's the hacker, who's the hustler, and who's the
hippie?
The hippie.
The hippie in your team?
Yeah.
All right. Ask me that at the end. I'll tell you who's where.
Let's get into it. Assign us.
Let's read this. Let's co-create.
Let's co-create.
So the hacker is the person who, let's say, is really the one who comes up with a core idea, right? And they're the fairly technical person. They keep things going, and they're the builder. Who would that be in your team?
That's Zia.
That's who?
Ranga.
Okay, that's fine. So he's the hacker. And then
which is okay because we've revoked his finance degree.
You can't do that to him. I went to school with that guy.
Yeah,
he was really smart at NAST. He was really smart. I don't know about now.
We've taken his finance degree away from him.
These finance people looked down upon us banking people because they thought they were smarter because they were doing stochastic processes and all of that stuff. Then we ended up doing banking. So that's your hacker. Then you have your hipster, the person who makes things look pretty. Right? They're the person who says, okay, this is the core, but we could polish it here, there, and there. And I like to think, who do you think that is?
Yeah, that's probably me.
Yes, that would have to be you, Tinashe, because you want people wearing suits to funerals. We will revisit this. I have something for you there.
Half the time we're late on the show, it's because of his vanity project.
He's trying to look pretty. And make everybody else look pretty.
He's taking endless photos in different poses.
There's something about men who take selfies, but
and he's pedantic about all the details, and he's like, no, you need to retake this one. And
see now,
because on social media it matters.
Absolutely,
that's what people don't realize.
In fact, any little thing can be caught, and people just go off with it, which is fine. It's social media. Some of my friends say it's not real life. It's a reflection, though, and then that leaves you, unfortunately.
Yes, I'm the hustler. I'm the guy who actually. I'm the guy who actually goes and gets the sponsors.
Yes.
To write us checks that clear, to keep the lights on.
And to be fair, I didn't quite know much about. I knew Ranga because he was my schoolmate, but I think I knew Rufaro more from a market perspective. So clearly, that's your hustler right here.
Yeah, he's out
and
there.
You know he can go the extra mile because he's a man who runs the conference. So he knows what to do. He's the resilient one because it's not easy to sell things.
Yeah.
So I think going back to the topic and just to sum it up, the thought pattern was very simple: that if you can bring people together, then they can begin to build things. And the intent with Muzinda Hub then was to support them, like what a lot of innovation hubs do. I think the biggest one in the world, perhaps the most popular, is Y Combinator. And you were referencing my travels about 2 weeks ago. I was in California. I actually passed through there, and we all know that that's the home of pretty much Silicon Valley. A lot of innovation going there.
That's
the
true.
truth is,
The
many
one
of
founded
us
by Paul Graham. Yeah. Okay.
exactly. You know things. You know things. So the intent was really to kind of mirror that, have a space where you bring people to come together and they can hopefully build things. Yeah. And I think at that time, a number of other ones were active. I know that, I think it was Joseph Bunga who was doing Area 46, which was more a co-working space, one of the very first former ones. Takunda Chungonzo, the Zimbabwean guy who eventually, at that time, interviewed Obama, I think, had started something up in Bulawayo, which was called Neolab, later to become Tech Village. And I think Rudo and her team were doing Stimulus Hub. We were a number of us in the ecosystem.
Okay,
Less
fantastic.
Than 5. Yeah.
So 10 years on. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious about something. Your thesis, because I'm a techie and I like to observe, what's happening in that universe. And one of the things that I've been curious about for the longest time is Silicon Valley. It seems to be the place where all this innovation happens. And what is the special sauce? From in your opinion, why is it that all these amazing companies were all founded on the west coast of the US in a way that's not true of any other region in the world?
Okay, my first impression, because I'm a joker, is to say it's proximity to the prison Alcaraz, but to be honest, I don't know why. I don't know why. What was in the water, if anything, there.
El Dorado.
But I think it has a lot to do with...
It was the gold rush.
Yes, exactly.
So remember,
the
these are grandsons of people who were part of the gold rush. So who were those people who went into El Dorado and did the gold rush? It were buccaneers. Were purely buccaneers. So they went in and they had a particular gin. And that gin has remained in California.
So do you reckon then, and this is me now interviewing you instead of you interviewing me, that
entrepreneurship
is caught or taught?
Well, you know what, and I've emphasized this quite a bit. I think that it's in the genes. Okay. It's mostly in the genes, and then you can always improve on it and you can make it better. But you can't teach people to have guts and to be gutsy and to be buccaneering. You can't teach people.
You're probably right. There definitely could be something in the water, because even if you bring it back to Africa, there are a certain type of people who are entrepreneurial, families even. So one could argue, but one also could argue that if you are born in a family where one person is entrepreneurial, and then that person, shows you, and that's the way so without a doubt, it becomes something that occurs to you that I can take risks. But I tend to agree that not all of us are meant to be entrepreneurs. And so this is why when people have conversations about the state of a nation, for example, and I talk to mine precisely, they're like, oh no, things are hard. You need to we can't entrepreneur ourselves out of a nonsense ecosystem. Now, let's come back to California, where you were speaking of. It is exactly. I've said I can back everything up. I've said, find me. You know where to find me. So here's the thought: in California, you take note that not only do you have your buccaneers that you've spoken to, but some of the very oldest universities, look at your Stanfords, and then they're churning out people. Because the interesting bit about a lot of people who then became co-founders is that they met at universities. Now, my question is, how many people are meeting in universities where we are? So it now comes back to a whole lot of things at the same time, right? It's the genes, the genetics, what's coming from the inside, but the environment also matters. So what spaces are you in, right? People talk a lot about how, if you're an entrepreneur, some of them drop out of Harvard, out of Stanford. Try dropping out of NAST and see how you suffer with Ranga. So that's one that's for Ranga, because he left us and went to do law. But anyway, there's that. But also, it's the country you're in. It's the nation that you're in. So it's not just that you find Silicon Valley, yes, does have a concentration of all those Palo Alto companies. But across the United States, the truth of the matter is you can see the ease of doing business. There's a little clip that was going around, which I tended to agree with. It is a nation where you can take risk, right? And then there's also risk capital. There are people who are, angel investment is a thing there. It's pretty serious.
Entrepreneurial capital. I think I tend to agree with you. Yes. Although I would like to just push back a bit on California. and also we want to hear your thoughts, Rufaro. So my take or my thesis is this, that at its core, it's people who are buccaneering. So you gathered, at a certain period in the 19th century, you gathered a group of buccaneers, people with a particular gene in a particular location. And they were hunting gold, which they found. But 3 generations after, they now have capital. So you now have the venture capitalist whose grandfather was a buccaneer, but he's now a billionaire. So the gene is in him, but he doesn't have a new idea. So what does he do with his capital? He finds other entrepreneurs, but because he has the buccaneering gene in him, he's willing to take the risk. Now you have that high concentration, and I tend to agree with you, because in Africa we're being pushed into entrepreneurship, which is actually bad for us, because you have people who with no idea about entrepreneurship and who shouldn't even be in entrepreneurship. Whereas in California, you had people who have got the genes, and then they're in this closed society where everyone is more or less like them. So what that does is just perpetuates your strengths. It's like if you're a marathon runner and you're surrounded by marathon runner, it just makes you a better marathon runner.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes California great.
Could be so. So
I'm using that as the antithesis to your thesis that, while it is true that you have all these things, you still need the universities, you still need the water, you still need...
Yes, because that's an ecosystem, all right? So one can push back also to you and say, who is going to work for all of those entrepreneurs? Is everybody in California an entrepreneur? No, right? Yeah. So someone's got to be employed. So whilst I would agree, and I was actually going to come back to the hackathon idea and say the beauty of the hackathon, there I do agree, is that you actually but in quotes force or bring together like-minded people. You bring together the entrepreneurs. You have to call them, because they are not necessarily concentrated in a California like you would say. I'm not 100% on the history. You seem to know much more than I do, but I would say that I think I can build on what you're saying, and it does make some sense. But I do think an ecosystem is what makes entrepreneurship work, which is what we were hoping to stir up in Zim then. And I think a lot of African countries have done. And also that's also part of what I think for the Kenyan ecosystem has really helped them, or countries that are across Africa where there's a lot of entrepreneurship activity. Just a few days ago, I was reading a report around where investment goes, right? Startup investment. And we have what we call the Big Four. Our Big Four in Africa is South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, and Kenya. And of course Kenya. And one could look the same way we are concentrating on California and say, what do we find in these ecosystems, right? What happens in those nations? Is it because they have a concentration of entrepreneurs? Perhaps so. There are entrepreneurs in every country, right? Even Zimbabwe has its entrepreneurs, albeit few, but they are there. Then the question is, how do these other places... That's a curious thing, because I'd like us to actually double-click on that and go down a rabbit hole on that. So capital has found its way in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. Is it because that's where the highest concentration of entrepreneurs is? Or
no, it's just because capital? Of the markets are... I think those markets are big in an African context, right? In terms of just the dollar value of the Nigerian market, of the South African market, of the Egyptian market, of the Kenyan market, right? It's not a coincidence that those are the 4 biggest markets in Africa. Right.
In terms of you're investing in entrepreneurs whose market is actually global. It's not really about Nigeria.
But the point is,
if Kenya is a small market,
if you build a product
million,
in Nigeria, you've got a market of 200 million people, right?
On Nigeria, right? Yeah. That's the biggest thing for them is the market, right? You can scale, right? So if you build a small thing in Nigeria, it's how many times? Where is Zimbabwe now? 15, 17?
16 million?
Depending on who you're speaking to, it's 10 times as large. So you definitely can scale. Yeah. So you're absolutely right on Nigeria. I would not blanket say what causes what for all 4, because it's different. With Kenya, you will notice that it is because their digital transformation agenda or Meta's digital are pushed from the highest level. So it's top down, right? Policy wise, they're much more friendly. And it's a friendly home for a lot
Well,
of
they don't
people.
have natural resources, so they have to be competitive.
Absolutely,
also.
yes. They do their tea, they do their runners, but you can only have so many. You should come to Kenya. You're probably Kenyan somewhere. You're a runner. Specifically Eldoret. That's where the runners come from.
They make interesting beer over there.
They make interesting beer. I mean, Tuskers is a thing. So there's that. But I think then that's where the point I was bringing comes in to say, and this is what I feel like this could have been Zimbabwe if our policies were right. If we were to say, and I'm not saying Kenya is a perfect country, but I am saying if the format that they have and the support that they have and the leaning towards digital they have were to be replicated
But
here.
it's almost impossible, Kudzai, because Kenya doesn't have natural resources. So they're forced to be more innovative as far as policy is concerned. Whereas Zimbabwe is an extractive industry based economy.
Would you use the same explanation for Rwanda? Because that's one of the countries, albeit small, where they say that they are very deliberate about their digital strategy.
You have to be.
Because
You
they
have to
optimize everything.
You have to be innovative as far as policy is concerned. So Rwanda compared to the DRC, the DRC doesn't have to be competitive as far as policy is concerned.
I don't know
it's
about
extractive
Zim.
industry.
I don't know about Zim. Like, do we really have resources? Do
So
we?
I
Do
think-
we?
I think innovation.
We're saying the natural resources are there.
Of the nation.
We have
Okay,
gold.
They exist
So
somewhere.
if you're chasing a dollar, international dollar that's out there, and you've got the worst policies in the country, but this is the only place you can find the diamond or you can find the gold, then the buccaneer investor is just forced to go into those industries. Whereas in Kenya, they have no resources. So the only thing that they can sell is innovative policy and say, hey, come to us. Because stories,
we're a comfortable home.
We're a
a
comfortable
safe
home.
space.
We're a safe
Which,
space.
which
We can
frankly they are.
beat each other to a pulp, but you know what? We will hold hands and we'll sing Kumbaya, and we'll continue. So it's like, oh yeah, it is Africa. It still happens. But they do come around and policy moves forward.
So I think innovation is a cultural thing.
Yep.
So if you look at, my thesis, when you look at, the west coast of the US, Silicon Valley, and the US in general, right? So the US as a country was an entrepreneurial project, right? So even before it became independent, right? So this is where the genetics that Tinashe
speaks to
comes into its own, because even as a colony, even when it was part of the British Empire, right, it required a certain kind of mindset and genetic makeup for you to decide that I'm going to settle in this new
to literally live your own home.
Exactly, because that's taking a risk, right?
Do you want an interesting anecdote as far as that's concerned?
Yeah.
It's that it was actually aristocratic families, but it was the second born. But because
second bonds are up.
because
you went in line.
you went.
I was not in line for the
inherit.
throne. That could be
because
true.
you couldn't inherit.
Yes.
So the firstborn would inherit everything, and they would remain in the UK or in Europe.
Wow.
But then the secondborn had the genetic makeup, had the gutsy gene, and they wanted glory, and the only way they could play it out was
moving
in
out.
becoming a buccaneer in new frontiers.
I didn't know that. I'm going to tell that to my siblings.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Similar to Africa as well. That
So the
Cecil
settlers.
Rhodes.
So the settlers. So already you are it's not natural selection, but there's this. You're filtering for a certain kind of adventurous, risk-taking spirit, right? By establishing a colony that's a whole ocean away, right? And then for them to then decide, actually, we don't like what that guy is telling us about how to live our lives.
We're leaving.
That George.
Right?
We're leaving.
And we're going to, declare independence. It's also, and we're not going to establish our nation based on ethnicity or bloodline.
Hereditary,
We're going to you're a citizen, based on this idea that we have about what a country should be about,
Awesome.
right? And so the colonies were all on the East Coast, and obviously as they were expanding towards the West Coast, even amongst them, you're filtering for the guys with the highest risk
buccaneer,
appetite, with the highest
So by the
spirit
time
of
you get to
adventure.
California-
So by the time you get to California, you filtered for the most aggressive entrepreneurial.
It's a pure brand.
Yeah, the pure
fair
breed.
enough. I can
Exactly.
I can buy that.
And then
buy that.
because you've got this mindset and worldview, you're welcoming to people who see the world in the same way. So it doesn't matter if you rock up and you've got a weird complexion and a weird accent, and you went to school somewhere in the world that most people have never heard of. If your idea is interesting and it's exciting and it's you can build potentially a new kind of product, they'll entertain you and they'll fund you. Whereas if if you're in the UK or Japan, you have to dress a certain way. You have to sound a certain way.
You must wear a suit to a funeral.
You have to be this kind of person, right?
So you miss. You felt it. No. Let me rescue you. Let me rescue you on this.
Let's get into it.
So my people are extremely hypocritical because Zimbabweans will say, we shouldn't be wearing suits, they're not natural to us. And this is why, but just so you know, I started my day wearing a suit at a certain meeting. Then what I'm wearing now is my protest, right? Firstly, let the record show that this is my protest. But I'm in Zimbabwe, it's hot, it's October.
Yep.
And I cannot be, there are places where I was stuck, so I could do that. Here, I'm hoping that this is a liberated zone. Tinashe. I'm coming from Kenya, it's a liberated, this is normal in Kenya, right? By the way, I had to get used to it. So it's a liberated zone.
So it's not just a Friday thing?
No. You can literally walk in a lot of East African countries, by the way. And this is normal. West Africa as well. So I think the project was more successful down here in Southern Africa. We still like to wear our suits and ties.
Some of us.
Yes, and this is a poster child. But having said that,
in my defense, first of all, as far as the wool is concerned, you do understand that you could have, when it's hot, you have 110. Which is a lighter wool
thread,
and
I knew we were going
lighter
to get
thread.
Oh my gosh,
and then when it's winter,
getting into the weeds of
it's a Friday, Tinashe. It's your birthday, but we'll indulge you. It's your birthday. Go for it.
Anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say that in conclusion, to bring this matter to a close, Zimbabweans are the same people who have a Lobola list. And what is listed on that list?
Suit.
Baba. Those are the people you're fighting with, Tinashe. That's the only thing you should have thrown back to them. You can't be saying, Masuta Alabasa. You guys will literally, that's a hill Zimbabweans will die on. Sutia Baba. Not a single one says shit. African attire.
You know what was interesting about that? I was actually shocked. A lot of people thought I was trolling. In all honesty, I wasn't trolling. I was actually thinking, this is the richest man who's never worn a suit, but he's going to a funeral wearing a suit. And that's the highest form of respect. And that's all I was saying.
Fair enough.
And
for what it's worth, we will wear a suit to your funeral.
Thank you very much. Are you going to wear a suit to my funeral?
Yes, I will.
So
now I can die happy.
Not now, though. We're recording. So the truth of the matter is we like a good suit. That's why we have one for every pocket, starting from the $30 all the way to the really nice
Oh my
ones.
gosh.
Yeah, we do.
A $30 suit.
Oh yeah.
No, don't do it. That's all I'm going to say. But at the risk of sounding classist, I think just buy a shirt. If you can't buy a proper suit, just buy a proper good shirt. Yeah. But having said that, perhaps innovators might come up with a new kind of suit that suits us here. You're talking about threads. And to go back to that, because it's a topic that's passionate to my heart, I do think we have a lot of problems in Africa, lots of them, similar in Zimbabwe. And innovation, by its very definition, is either coming up with improving how things are already done or coming up with a completely novel way. I do think we have a lot of innovation. We just don't capture it. That's my belief. We don't capture it. And then number two, our markets are just so small.
That's an important point. So I want us to, again, double click on that, because you're saying we don't capture it. So the innovation is there. Maybe it's not innovation, but it's the invention. And
both, actually.
It's creative ideas, it's ideation. But unfortunately, we don't have the platform in which we can then harness that invention and those ideas.
Absolutely.
To then commercialize them and then to make commerce out of them. And this now has to do with the system itself.
Exactly. And that's why I will come back and roll back to say you can have all the entrepreneurs you want, all the entrepreneurial energy, but without an ecosystem for them, then it will not work. So this is why you find that a lot of, so I was reading, like I was saying, where money went in terms of investment, right? And you find that Zim at least appears when the threshold changes to those who got investments of, say, 100,000 and below, which is really small money, right? So we appear there. When it comes to millions, we are not really there. I suspect we are probably hidden by people who've gone to set up in Kenya. I've gotten a lot of Zimbabwean entrepreneurs calling, how do I register a company? Can I do it in Kenya? Because they know that that's where the capital is flowing. And so those that are entrepreneurial, because they are entrepreneurial, that's my view, their nature will be to seek places where they can make homes for themselves. It could be Mauritius, it could be, in Kenya, it could even be Egypt, well, not as many in Egypt, but in South Africa perhaps.
You're bringing out something that we've discussed, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, because this is very critical. Okay, so if Zimbabweans have the genes, those that have the genes, and unfortunately the culture and the environment does not sustain or help them in any way, then clearly, if you're entrepreneur, then you go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Like the Buccaneers in the UK, they went to the US. So if we're going to Kenya, if we're going to Nigeria, if we're going to America, how come in the diaspora we don't see as many entrepreneurs?
Okay, well spotted. Yes,
our greatest entrepreneurs did so in Zimbabwe, not outside of Zimbabwe.
Yes, but where are they now? Who's the top?
Strive is based in the UK.
Yes, and he's the poster child. Go anywhere, because we do a lot of training across the nation. Go anywhere and say, who is an entrepreneur? All the kids will say Strive. Who's the other one? You could
Zed.
talk of
Zed
is here. I think that's a really good example. In fact, some of their products are super popular in across the region. Kenya especially. I don't know why. Okay, let me not go there. But people really love their chicken and chips. Is all I'll say. And it's interesting to note that. But if we put the top 5, then where are they now? Do they base themselves here?
But that's them no longer as entrepreneurs. So I think that when they made their money, they were entrepreneurs. Then I think now it's a question of lifestyle and all other issues why they're not.
Is it lifestyle or going to spaces where you can raise?
Because
raise more money.
It's not like,
because if you stay here, can you raise? Can you?
No. Living in the UK as a lifestyle
exactly.
choice.
No, it's not a lifestyle choice.
It's also a business choice, right?
Exactly. It's very much a business choice.
He raises money there. He does business.
No, fair enough.
And I actually think, and this is from a one of the things we want to do on the show is to evangelize the policy around this, because I think that what's critical is actually the environment that you create. So great entrepreneurs are born randomly all over the world, right? So I'll give you a sporting analogy to make my point, right? If you think about soccer, for example, right, world-class soccer, where are the best players in the world? Where do they go to play, right?
I was going to say Liverpool, but
Spain.
Right. So they play in Europe, right? Yes. In the European leagues. Why?
In Spain,
right?
Not England.
Right, because
Spain.
Because that's where they get paid the most, right? So and if you look at the top teams over there, they've got players from Brazil, from all over the world, right? Because that's where everybody can shine. Like
the peak.
So it's not that all of these super talented players are born in Europe, right? But they end
find
up
their way there.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think the same is true with entrepreneurship. They will, if you've got an entrepreneurial passion. And it's not working out for you in Zim, you're going to end up somewhere else where...
Rufaro, I want you to answer this, because running with your analogy, right? You're saying the best players, the best entrepreneurs out of Zim, if they go out there, then they're going to be the best entrepreneurs in the world.
Or they'll do much better than they would.
But that's not what we're saying. The best entrepreneurs were born in Zimbabwe, and their businesses still run in Zimbabwe. We haven't seen
your Philip Mataranyikas who came and hacked your.
Where does he spend half his time?
No, that's secondary.
Reality,
we're saying,
like, his whole story is internal. Is the
Zimbabwe.
question.
Why is it the entrepreneurs?
So this is,
and I want you to answer this.
Yeah.
And let me try and be very succinct. Why is that? Because with your analogy is you might have a Messi who's born in Argentina, but somewhat for whatever reason Argentina is limited, so they have to go out and play in Spain. And then that's when they flourish.
Yes.
And I'm saying, but the same is not true of Zimbabweans. What we've seen is the Zimbabweans that are billionaires, that have the entrepreneurial gene and that have done phenomenally well, have done so in Zimbabwe. And their companies are running in Zimbabwe. And that is what has made them famous. Yes, they have then gone out internationally. But their entrepreneurial journey is in spite of them going internationally. But how come we haven't seen Zimbabweans who had the gene, moved out in the diaspora, and they've done phenomenally well. And I could be wrong, yeah. And audience, please help me. If you know entrepreneurs who are at the, Z, Strive,
yes.
Philip.
But one thing also comes up, and someone said this, this is not my original thought. I thought this was insightful. They said that these are entrepreneurs of a certain stage and age, right? So we're going to have to classify the entrepreneur school
The 90s.
of the 90s,
Okay.
of the whatevers and all of that. Could be interesting to see whether they all experience the exact same thing. I want to hazard to say that it's a bit more difficult now. It should look easier because you have the internet, supposedly. But I think there were a few more things that were easier back then. Like just finding money now is not as, let me not say easy then, because it was not necessarily easy then, but there were formats like banks which worked, right, for entrepreneurs. And many of them leveraged those. They were able to sell houses. Who is an entrepreneur now who has a good idea, who has a house like Nigel to sell?
Okay, so Kudzai, you're right. And what I would expect is those entrepreneurs would have moved out of Zim and they would have gone elsewhere where the environment is more conducive. Could you name those entrepreneurs?
In this same
I
age.
think there's a survivor.
In this
so,
age.
so I can say that in this day and age, there are very few. Like very few. There's a guy who does, is it called Leslie? Glidetime Foods?
Yeah. But he's still in
doing
Zim.
super well, very much in Zim.
He's still in Zim.
I know a lady called Ethel, also a junior from, but she's doing very well.
No, I'm saying, okay,
Yes.
so they've got the genetic makeup of an entrepreneur and they found the Zimbabwean environment too constraining and they have left and they've gone elsewhere. They've gone to Kenya or they've gone to the US and they've gone to Australia. Why is it we don't see their names on the
So I
billionaire list?
can
They're
explain
small
to you why we
fish
don't
in
see.
big ponds.
I can explain to you why we don't see their names, right? Because when you zoom out and you look at things from a global perspective, right? Who are the superstars, right? Your Zuckerbergs, your Jeff Bezoses,
Your
they're worth
Americans, pretty
hundreds
much.
of billions,
Becomes
right?
tech.
So for you
Okay.
for your
Get on a
name
list.
to appear on that list, you have to be super exceptional, right? But if you think about it from a Zimbabwean perspective, right? If somebody who the three of us has never heard of was born in Zim and left and built a business that's now worth 50 million in Australia, right? But we have no idea that this person exists, right? Are they not a super successful entrepreneur?
They are.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay, so
Yeah.
But we wouldn't know that. We wouldn't.
Yeah, we
wouldn't-
definitely wouldn't know
Okay.
them. They
We
would
wouldn't
just
know
not
them.
make, they won't make the big
know
lists.
them, and I'm going to push back
Yeah.
hard, because the same is not true of South Africans. So you've got lots of South Africans who didn't make their billions in South Africa. So they were born in South Africa, they grew up in South Africa, but found South Africa very limiting. And in fact, you have more billionaires who are South African or of
Who were born in South
African
Africa.
descent.
born in
Yeah.
South African descent who made their money internationally. Right, so
I get your point.
And
I think I wasn't
can't
getting you
make- I
fully.
can't make
You
that
can't make the
parallel
same with Zimbabweans.
With Zimbabweans,
Yes.
where I can
Well,
say,
we are-
you know
we
what?
are in our
Yes,
defense.
the environment was constraining, and yes, but the entrepreneurial was always there. Because there's an argument I want to put across, a very cheeky argument.
That we don't have entrepreneurs.
No.
That-
I want to hear him.
Yes, that actually we are not entrepreneurial, but we are actually more tradesmen,
Traders. I agree.
traders.
I absolutely agree. I was actually
and
gonna
th- that
sneak in-
actually maybe
Yes.
that's where we
I
should
was going to
focus
sneak
on.
in to say we continue to have a fight around definitions of what is a startup. You see, the global definition of startup and what the Ministry of SMEs, and I'm not trying to diss them, you will go there and they'll say, oh, we have lots of startup companies. Others are doing peanut butter. Others chickens. They're all starting up. That's not what we mean, right? A startup is, by global definition, a company that has found a model that is looking to scale, like that is replicable, scaling outside. So I think the fight is continually between startup and SMEs. We have lots of SMEs and some really good ones, by the way. However, a lot of even what we call our big companies here would become small businesses by American definition. So it comes back also to what Rufaro was saying. We might not hear much about them because in the grand scheme of things, they're small. They're small
But I
players.
think Tinashe is onto
Yeah.
something. I think where I'll give you credit. I think genetically we're just less likely to be entrepreneurial. Just if you think about
The numbers, though.
If you think about, no, from a historical perspective, right? So if you talk about, like, I was just thinking about the example that he gave, right, about South Africans that have done well on the global stage,
Glencore.
right? But let's be frank, they're mostly white. Right, and they're descendants of people who resettled, who left the established world so they were more entrepreneurial than their peers, right? To leave England to go and set up to settle in South Africa.
In a frontier market.
So if you think about it, just genetically, right, they're descendants of people who were more risk taking, right? So they're much more genetically predisposed to be entrepreneurial, right? Then whereas if you think about us, and our ancestors,
we're traders.
We've been in the same lands for hundreds of years, if not millennia, doing pretty much the same thing, and we have, and so we're not.
There was no need to innovate.
We're not genetically predisposed to take big risk.
It's offensive, but the truth is we don't have that many entrepreneurs. That I agree with. We don't have that many.
No, it's just factual. There's nothing offensive about facts.
And the few that do find themselves entrepreneurial do find their way outside. And I think I'll concede that I've not heard, because I've really tried to scratch. Okay,
fantastic.
Mind.
So I'm going to go even further with this. Then the people that have gone into the diaspora, when you look at them, and it's a debate that we had the one time, is they become bureaucrats and civil servants and or
professionals.
Yeah. So somebody who's successful in the diaspora is not somebody who's hustling, who started
they're in a very good job.
They're in a very good job, and that is what we laud as Zimbabweans.
And I see absolutely nothing.
So we're not entrepreneurial. We're not predisposed to entrepreneurship.
Because if the Indian, for example, when they go to the UK, they're not going there to work for a bank. Yeah, you do have some who do, but a lot of them are going there to start businesses. Maybe not entrepreneurial, but just to start a business. Their hopes and dreams are to start a business and to grow a business. Whereas as Zimbabweans, we're going to South Africa to find professional
the best
jobs.
Possible job, and you're switching between them and going up the ladder where possible.
Exactly.
Which is absolutely fine. You get a decent return on your skills. I think that's fair and fine. So I guess I do also lean to that, because I've always argued.
I was hoping that you disagree.
Why?
Because he loves to argue.
I don't like to lie.
Then we can have.
I don't like to lie. No, I'm going to bring up something that I think will be spirited. Yeah.
But I wasn't really sure of that argument.
I think I'm reasonably well traveled, and I meet a lot of my people because they know me as a financial educator. So the question is, they're basically looking to invest, not so many people looking to start things. You do have a few asking, but again, I'll say, these are not people who are building startups. I work with startups in other ecosystems, right? They're clearly not they're trying to build a family business. They're trying to build, it will be a business, it will employ maybe 10, 20 people, it's modest, it's a side hustle for what it's worth. So frankly, forgive me if anyone is listening to this and you're an entrepreneur and we've met. I really cannot think of anyone I've met who's doing exceptionally well, and they're really an entrepreneur. And this, of course, is the limitation of my phone book. But having said that, I'm talking about I'm talking about a list of, let me say, people who are of a certain age and stage. The young people are the ones who give me a lot of joy, because in any year, I will talk to at least 5 to 10, what I'd like to call young innovators, who have really brilliant ideas, who, given the support, and I'll roll back to where we started, that given the necessary support, could actually build. But then now it becomes a question of what is really an entrepreneur, because they also have complaints. Right? They'll be saying, oh, we can't do this because it's being regulated in this way, or I can't access money. Most of the questions are, can you help me to raise? Right? Where can I find money? Because there isn't really angel investment that's active here, but it's more active in some countries. So your Kenyas included, your Nigerias, your South Africa, you will find specific angel investment groups ready. And so generally I'm just taking their decks, and passing them on to people who I know in those spaces, in the hope that they can get some money. Sometime last year, November, we hosted Digital Africa, because they'd come to Zim and they'd reached out to us first, saying that they wanted to invest, just small amounts, 100K, in safe notes to a couple of ideas. And we were able to find some really compelling ideas. But you can see that there's always a continuous struggle. Right. And again, I'm sorry to say this to my people, but you are right. The more I think of it, that a lot of them, when you bring them together, it's a one-man show. They have a really good idea, but they don't know how to build teams, or they don't want to build teams because they want the thing to be chinchangu, which I feel like comes back to perhaps our lack of entrepreneurship. I do feel if you're a proper entrepreneur, you will still emerge as a champion, but you can still build a very big
collaborate.
thing.
You have to collaborate.
Yes, you can collaborate. So it looks like that it leans in that way.
So okay, it's very clear we're bureaucrats, we're professionals, and we're not necessarily entrepreneurs. But there
also
is
the
a
culture. I think that there's so
how we're socialized.
yeah, so
yeah. Our parents didn't want us to
because there's an argument that I find quite compelling as well, which is if you think about the smartest people around you when you grew up, right, and how they chose their vocations, right. A lot of people grew up in in an environment where money was a big deal, and so that was so when they were thinking about vocation, it wasn't about what is my passion or what is where would I naturally do well. It was about, I think doctors do well financially.
Exactly.
I think I'm smart enough to get into med school. So I'm gonna be a doctor.
Become a doctor,
or
yeah.
Hey, look, those accountants seem like they're doing okay. So I'm gonna. And then at some point, it was the bankers who were doing incredibly well, and the smartest people all went and did banking and finance, right? So you've got this ambient, or you've got this cultural phenomenon where the brightest people in certain areas are drawn to certain vocations, right? And entrepreneurship has never really registered in the imagination of bright young people as a viable vocation, right? We don't talk about it a lot. It's not.
It's not sexy enough.
To the extent that we've got role models, we don't. We don't celebrate them as much as we should. So people are still.
We chase them away.
People, And even if you think about Zimbabwe in the current context, right? If you're a young man or woman, the Mingas are the ones who are the Mingas, right?
And they're not entrepreneurs.
They're not. They're entrepreneurs, right?
They've gone to school,
right? So nobody's thinking about let me build a great business. So in this part of the world, we haven't made it sexy.
Yeah.
Right. In the first instance, right. Whereas in Silicon.
So maybe that's the question.
Yeah,
how do we? Because you've lived in Kenya, you've lived elsewhere.
Yes.
How do we make it sexy? So in the context that we understand that most of us are not entrepreneurial, but there are some of us that are
potential.
Exactly. Potential.
And I think that's where
so
we're really much
how do we
aligned.
make it?
So those folks are the people who then need entrepreneurial support. And I like what Rufaro just said, lays a very nice foundation. Because if we're to take the same person, though I know you're going to push back and say, how come they don't make it in America? Take the same person, put them in America or China, or not China, let me just say America for now, because at least they've got to speak English. Put them in a space where everything can align. They can go through an incubation program. As soon as they're done, they're handed $1 million. You're told, play with it, risk-free. So here's the thing. I do think the entrepreneurs who might be there will not easily emerge because it's not a comfortable space to be an entrepreneur. Your parents don't want to hear about it. First of all, we sent you to school. What the hell do you think you mean you want to be an entrepreneur, right? Find a good job and, be safe.
And you're smart enough to actually get a job.
Exactly, and be smart enough to get a job. So the entrepreneurs I do know, or the people who are working on startups with really good ideas now, all of them are in jobs, right? And it's firstly the socializing, which you're speaking to, but also because the environment has nothing that supports you. Like there's no one who's handing you a check to say, this is what you need, let go of the job, your day-to-day needs are taken care of, pursue the entrepreneurial journey. And that's why it's not sexy. Because why would I don't check it as I don't have the good English for that, but why would I sacrifice myself when I could be in a job? So most people who I find who are entrepreneurs, who I know of, are both doing the job within the Zimbabwean ecosystem, doing a job, but also trying to build. But there's only one of you. Right?
Yeah.
So you will get tired. And number two, you are funding a lot of these things with your own money. And you're also in an ecosystem or an environment where you can't walk into a bank, you can't go to an angel investor, there really isn't everything that you find that is patient capital or even capital that is adventurous, that takes a chance on you. And this is the point where I would say, maybe to balance it out, it's not that we don't 100% have entrepreneurs, but even the ones that could have emerged, that probably have the gene, who could have done well, will not do well in an environment that is not nurturing. Okay. So to answer your question first is to say there has to be a shared responsibility for supporting them, right? There's a policy angle to it. And I'm on record because I know some people will push back to me on Twitter. I've said this before. I think a real entrepreneur will still find a way, like the real ones.
Absolutely.
The ones who are whining should find jobs. entrepreneurs will find a way. That's what I know. People who are entrepreneurs, they will always find a way.
But even in the best markets in the world, right? Entrepreneurship, it requires risk-taking. It reminds me of this story, So when Elon set up SpaceX, right? The first, high-level engineer that he hired, was very uncomfortable leaving his secure job to go and work for this guy, right? And instead of taking equity in the startup, he insisted that 2 years' salary would be put in escrow, so that so he's guaranteed that if this thing, whether
soft landing,
if it blows up, at least for the next 2 years, he's going to get paid every. That's the primary concern. So already, when you think about Zimbabwe, and our propensity to value security and safety in employment or in vocation, right? Now, even if you're a great entrepreneur, who's you got a fantastic idea with boundless potential, right? How do you hire bright minds in a market where everybody...
You can't.
That's the truth. You actually don't even have the capital.
This is why, for me, even the little... I used to think of myself as an entrepreneur. Then I realized I think I'm better off selling my skills in markets that appreciate them. Really, it's not for lack of trying. But you see, just trying to find co-founders and saying, guys, this is an idea. If we work on this and build this, we could go far, right?
Wow.
Everyone is saying, just pay me my money. This whole entrepreneur thing, do it yourself. And which is why I would argue that when the Strives and the Zs started, I think it was a different paradigm. For most people now, I understand with how hard things can be, why they would prefer to do this.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it upside down. So I agree with what both of you have actually said, but there's something that I want to segue into, but I think it's important because I think it actually brings out how best we can do this. And I'm going to use it as an example, what's actually happening in North Africa. So when you look at Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, which are extremely entrepreneurial countries. Do you know where those entrepreneurs are coming from? They're kids who were born in the diaspora in France, but they didn't remain in France. They went back home.
Yeah.
So they are kids who grew up in a westernized environment, but there's something about them that ensures that, okay, I can't succeed in the country that I'm in, that I was born in, but I need to go back home in Algeria, in Morocco, and start a business there. And they've succeeded. I think I know why. And I'm quite keen to hear what you guys think. I think that while it is true that you could be an entrepreneur, when you're born in the diaspora or live in the diaspora experience itself is hostile to who you are as a person. So I'm really getting into the psychology of entrepreneurship in life. So, I worked in the city in London, right? And I worked in Zim as well. And I found Zim more amenable, right? Because I knew exactly who to talk to.
How to navigate
Zim. Whereas you get into the city, no matter how bright you are, the environment is just hostile to you. And you're fighting all this hostility. You will succeed, but a lot of it is... there are these hurdles that you don't necessarily have to jump. Whereas if I were to come back home, you're in an environment. So yes, you were born French and you hold a French passport. But when you go back to Algeria, your ancestral home, the environment is not hostile to you at all. But you have the mindset of a first world.
Exactly.
And then now you can actually build. Because around the culture has to be the freedom. You have to be in an environment where you have the freedom.
Absolutely.
Whereas those who were born in Algeria will not see the opportunities because they're also fighting a different kind of hostility.
They're basically trying to live.
They're trying to live.
On the
day to
day. So anything fancier than that is just too much.
It's just too much. So, and that's why I was saying, everything you said, what if we turn it upside down and we start really venturing into, let's find those diasporians who are entrepreneurial and then let's give them the space, because then in Zimbabwe, they can see the opportunity or the environment is not so hostile.
Yeah, but you see, if you think about the Zimbabwean diaspora...
From a psychological perspective.
From
a psychological perspective.
I hear you, but if you think about the Zimbabwean diaspora, right, 99% of them are economic refugees, right? They're not there because... they're not there because, they prefer the lifestyle there, for academic reasons, right? They extreme hardship in Zim, better life in the diaspora.
But they're kids,
right? and so to the extent that the kids have the exposure and ideas and an entrepreneurial spirit, Zim is like extreme sports for business.
I think you both make a point.
Because
what excites me about that,
yes, because I just want to reply to him, and then you can
sure.
tie it all, and then we can finish the show. But when they come to Zim, they meet Uncle Tinashe. So they're born in Australia, they're born in the UK, and they've experienced all this innovative stuff, right? But unfortunately, the environment is hostile to them psychologically. So not from a, make to do a lifestyle, but really from a psychological perspective. But when they come home to Zimbabwe, yes, they're foreign, but they're coming to my house. They are living with me as Uncle Tinashe. But Uncle Tinashe was actually never entrepreneurial. But he says, okay, mfano you Mirandi Mtore. Let me give him the comforts that he needs, but let's use his mind to think about what products you need that can be projected out internationally. Because what is very important for an entrepreneur is that psychological safety. So now you've got
to be
like
in a safe space,
5-10 minutes to really
I can do it in
then
5.
capture everything.
I think I can
that
do
we
it in
say.
5 to say.
Okay.
I feel like if we were to put everything together, we will come back to very simply, what is the definition of innovation, right? And we said in one instance, if you're putting it simply, like you're explaining to a 12-year-old, it is improving on things that are existing. The entrepreneur who is within country has that opportunity because they see the problems on the daily, right? And because they're entrepreneurial, in as much as things are hard, their mindset, their thinking, how they view life will be different from the others. And this is why that person, if they're to tweet, for example, that, things are hard, yes, but there's opportunity, the rest of us will shout, but that person will continue on their trajectory because they see how they can solve problems. And I think that is where we get the old crop from. People who were quickly able to respond to whatever problems were found locally. But I do like the opportunity of the people who are coming from the outside in. I started my career as a banker at Kingdom Bank. And what I remember is that one of the most popular products in Zimbabwe, unit trusts, were popularized by Nigel because he had seen them as mutual funds in the United States and literally brought innovation, which was something novel to us, and popularized that. So what do I think about Zimbabwe's future? I'm an eternal optimist. I think sometime, I think we'll come right at some point. And we cannot keep waiting for government to put in the right policies, for so-and-so to do this. I do think that in conclusion, the real entrepreneurs, they will stand up. Second borns like me will find their way. Some of them will come from the diaspora. Some of them will come from within, and we will do the best we can to support them.
Well, Kudzai, on that note, I think you've summarized it beautifully. This was quite interesting.
Yeah, it was.
We need
fun.
to go even deeper, right?
Yeah, another time we go deeper another time.
Well, we'll find you in Nairobi.
Yes,
we'll definitely come and let's do that. Yeah. But thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
And for
Thank you
finding
very
the
much.
time. We love this. Cheers.
Cheers.